Not all companies can borrow from banks. Banks have to get that money from somewhere. Well, you know yourself, credit cards. You use a credit card, you don't see the money coming out, but somebody's paying for it. Oh, how are the banks that are going to finance them? Well, sometimes banks themselves actually uh, issue securities that are backed by those credit card receivables. And just like anything, these has two sides. You know, think of the global economy. The number of dollars that are borrowed is exactly the same as the number of dollars that are lent, right? If I'm borrowing money, one of you guys is lending me money. You know, some investors, with excess funds, they lend monies in money markets. Think of an insurance company, just a basic operation of an insurance company. I insure my car, I pay a monthly premium, but until I actually have an accident and you have to spend that money, you have that cash. But you can't simply say, oh, this guy gave me his money, let me put it into NVIDIA or Google. Because at some point, you know, by the laws of probability, you know you're going to have to pay some of that money. So what do you do? Just like the banks, in fact, even more, you keep those in reserves. Well, you're not going to keep it in a vault. You're going to keep it in a short-term instrument. So that part is the short-term side. Now, Fed funds rate only governs a very short end of the what we call the term structure, basically the maturity profile of interest rates. But from basically a week to about a year is the very active part of the short-term money markets. Fed funds rates do affect them, but not by much. There are other instruments. Now, in the old days, we had something called LIBOR, which was short for London Interbank Offered Rate. This was kind of a private arrangement, but in a lot of cases, you kind of need reference rates. This was, oddly enough, London is the center of the money markets in the world. Don't know why that happened that way. There was a LIBOR consortium set of 20 to 50 major banks. Every day, noon London time, they announced a rate at which they were willing to unsecured lend to banks in the consortium. So JP Morgan says, I can lend it to you guys at 450 today. Bank of America says I can do that 460. Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi says I'll do that 440. What have you? You take the average. That's the LIBOR rate. No transaction actually happens exactly at that rate, but it gives the rest of the markets what these banks are willing to do at that point. Okay. And this was very important. It was a reference rate for many, many transactions. Example, this is actually a very complicated, I mean, these days it's considered vanilla, but conceptually speaking, it's a complicated risk management tool. Think about it. 30 years fixed to floating interest rate swap. I am going to describe this for you, and we'll talk about how this is indeed a very useful risk management tool. Suppose I could, as a corporation, only borrow at a floating rate. This is actually very common in European and Asian markets. It's not as common in US, but even here, any of you guys own a home? Okay. I do own a home. Technically, my ex does, but my name is also there. And at the time we bought it free and clear, but we had to spend some money, and we got a home equity line of credit, and it had a rate. It was called at that point prime minus one. Prime is a rate, uh, typically Fed funds rate plus 3% or something like that. It is the rate at which banks lend to their best clients. Now, when we got this loan, Fed funds rates, this was 2015, were around 1% or so. No, 3% or so. And I was paying maybe, no, 1% or so. So I was paying about 4% on that. But as the rates went up, I started paying more. Home equity line of credit, you can treat it as interest only loan for 10 years. Then if you haven't paid it back, it converts to a regular mortgage loan. In fact, it's about to for me right now. But during COVID years, when Fed funds rates were pretty much zero, I paid very little interest. But as now it's 450, I'm paying something around 8%. That means as a borrower, I am taking the risk that interest rates are going to go up, right? I mean, if I think they're going to go down, I'm good. But since we don't know, it's a risk. So I have risk that interest rates will go up. Is there a way I can get rid of it? Turns out there is. Can I eliminate that risk? And if so, at what price? So I'm going to find a counterparty Let's assume we have no default risk differential between us, so we're both equally creditworthy. And say, how about the following deal? My current obligation is I need to pay LIBOR plus 2% as an APR every 3 months on $1 billion of loan. And let's say current LIBOR is 2%. That means every 3 months, that's 1%, because